Hi, everybody. After months and months of carrying on with the nonsensical threat, the alien threat, the deep space threat, the threat from aggressors, etc., the government effectively kills the alien threat scenario and doesn't probably know it. So what happened was that there was another one of these trumped up news conference types things. You know, you have to understand that all of this information about so-called extraterrestrials and UFOs, this has always been tabloid topic stuff for decades. And then suddenly, beginning last year, disclosure was about to take place. And if you're not suspicious about it, well, maybe you should be. So what happens here is that there's a little news conference that's given about this, and I happen to have seen the article in the US Sun about UFOs may be threat to US security and briefing on military sightings and all this stuff. Well, um, it's a beautiful thing, really, when these accidents take place and a little bit of truth gets through. So here's Representative Tim Burchett. That's Burchett, not Burchett. So Tim over here, he's a truth teller for the government, as you know. And let's realize that Lou Elizondo, who's been one of our favorite truth tellers for some time, he's been carrying on about this threat. He was in threat assessment and all, but he's on record now as saying that, well, have to rule out Russia and China, our potential adversaries here, as being the source of all this UFO stuff. And so he's now dancing around the deep space, the inner space, outer space, around the space, whatever topic, the threat's coming from somebody else. So he's locked into that now. And then here comes Tim Burchett along, and he just kind of lays it out about if this threat, if the Russians and or Chinese had this technology, dating back all the decades now that the threat has supposedly been secretly recorded, perceived, or observed, well, they would already own America by now. Of course, because they're evil, other nations in the world, and they aren't Americans. So in so saying, logic tells us that if the Russians and Chinese were the ones owning this technology, they'd own us now. Isn't it even more obvious that any evil ETs would have owned us by now, having this technology with, of course, the real history of extraterrestrials and UFOs going back many, 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 many millennia on this planet. So the government is in a funny position here, don't you think? I mean, the extraterrestrial threat, they would have owned us already. So that's not a threat. So what is it about? Well, underlying all this, in my opinion, still is the agenda to promote more wars and weapons for wars with Russia and China, a war that we would not win. According to the Hanok prophecies, and anybody that can put two and two together, we would be toast with this massive alliance of Russia, China, and other nations, countries, what have you, coming against us. So that's going to be perpetuated, but how? What are they going to come out with in a few days? This is, of course, being recorded some days before the supposed revelations from our government. What are they going to come out with here next? We've shot down Lou Elizondo's deep space threat. This guy eliminates Russia and China as a threat. So, I warned about the fake ET attack scenario as a buildup for weapons 2010, 11 years ago. Other people have talked about the fake ET attack, the whole thing. Werner von Braun confided to Carol Rosin probably decades ago that this would be a card that the government would play to create more control and fear and all that. Look, this is falling apart, but you can rest assured that you, the audience that pays attention to the information of the Billy Meier case that we do our best to get out, is not going to fall for it. But the majority of the rest of the world, and especially the UFO dummies and people in ufology that promote all this quackery and that kiss butt to Lou Elizondo and feel like they're insiders if they get featured with some of these devious types discussing the so-called threat, they're going to keep on tying their fortunes to the official narrative one way or the other, because now they're dependent on it. They feel like they're insiders here. So don't expect the world at large to really come down on this farce, and expect any other necessary disinformation to be still perpetuated by the powers that be. Who knows who's going to come further into play here? You already know Lou Elizondo, he can't say Billy Meier to save his life. We've asked him to stand up and honor his pledge. This is a military guy that can't keep his word to the American public. Then we've got Chris Mellon, the other part of the good cop, bad cop duo here with Lou Elizondo, who admits to me in writing that he knows the Meier case is authentic. And then we've got Daniel Sheehan, the attorney for Lou Elizondo, a guy who'd be a hero otherwise forever, who's just tarnished his reputation. He's trashed his legacy. He's thrown his lot in representing Lou Elizondo while he knows the Meier case is real. So this is soap opera material, as I've said for a while. Enjoy yourselves. Feel free to comment. Share this, just for the record, of course, because you might know that this is going to be things like this where we call it out. For those few who pay attention throughout the coming time, this might be of some value to them as well. So thanks a lot. TheyFlyBlog.com.